Politicians, industry leaders and activists are in Dubai arguing over how to control the internet. But should limits be placed on the web, and if so, how and by whom? We ask what it all means for freedom of speech online. This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm James Bays. Delegates from 193 countries are meeting in Dubai to discuss the future of the internet. They'll be negotiating a new international telecommunications treaty, which hasn't been updated since 1988. The main debate at the conference is over internet freedom. The US and Europe want less internet regulation. Countries like Russia and China are accused of wanting more. But possibly the bigger question of who controls the internet is also in play. The US in particular is criticised for dominating the way the internet is run. Tarek Bazley has more.
Instantaneous communication, a primary need of our complex society.
Since 1947, a UN body called the International Telecommunication Union, or ITU, has been in charge of international technical standards. Delegates from 193 countries have regulated everything from radio frequencies to satellite orbits. Their mission to make sure networks and technologies easily interconnect.
It is ours. It is free.
But according to the internet giant Google, and highlighted in this online video, the ITU could be about to take steps to reduce the free flow of information on the web. It says if proposals being heard at the ITU conference in Dubai are accepted, there will be an increase in censorship and national regulation.
Free and open web depends on me.
This draft proposal from Russia seeks to give individual countries the right to regulate both the content and the structure of the internet within their own borders. Currently, more than 40 countries, including China and Russia, do this, though without official sanction. Then there's a draft proposal from 17 Arab states. They want identity information of users to be sent with all online communication. They say this will cut down on fraud, but it could also be used to target political dissidents.
And unfortunately, some of the proposals that we see would take the old telephone model of regulation and simply apply it to new technologies like the internet. That would not be a good thing.
The internet gives us the freedom to talk with friends, make art, start a business, or speak out against our governments.
The ITU has hit back at its critics, including the makers of this video, saying all ITU members are welcome to submit proposals. It says though changes can be made with a simple majority, in the past nothing has been decided unless there was unanimous agreement, avoiding any need to vote.
I certainly wouldn't see any country proposing an issue to be a matter of voting. Voting means winners and losers in our jargon in ITU, and we cannot afford that.
The US, Europe and a number of Asian countries have promised to fight any changes that would affect internet freedom. But with battle lines drawn, this conference could well be a historic turning point for the internet. Tarek Bazley, Al Jazeera.
So is internet freedom being threatened? To help answer that question and more, we're joined by a panel of guests. From Dubai, Paul Keneally, Head of Communications for the International Telecommunications Union, the ITU, that's holding this conference. Also from Dubai, Ahmed Mansour, human rights activist. He was arrested last year on charges of running a website that the UAE government clamped down on. And joining us by Skype from Amsterdam, Richard Rogers, Professor of New Media and Digital Culture at the University of Amsterdam. Richard is also author of an upcoming book called Digital Methods. The conference taking place in Dubai, Ahmed, let's ask you the question of the day. Do you think this threatens internet freedom?
Well, there are concerns, of course, that this conference might result in some sort of regulation that may threaten the internet's freedom and the individual's ability to get the information freely over the internet without getting extra regulations and censorship on the content, or even prioritizing certain types of information that might lead individuals to either pay for certain type of information or even get their their information delayed and considered as low priority information. So the concerns that we are really talking about really here is driven by material facts that the internet is the entity that is facing most of the difficulties here in the region, especially in the with the countries that are considered to be repressive and not in the list of best countries dealing with the internet and freedom of expression and opinion, and generally in a human rights record.
OK, let's bring in Richard in Amsterdam. Do you see the possibility of a threat to internet freedom, and is there really such a thing?
Well, so just to clarify, I mean, there are a number of proposals on the table. I mean, I guess we'll hear more from the ITU exactly what these proposals are. But generally speaking, there is a sort of mood to change the governance structure of the internet from one that's often called a sort of multi-stakeholder system to one that's intergovernmental, so the one that's run instead by governments. And I think the fear is that the internet repression that is already going on, so the internet censorship that's already going on, the throttling of the speeds of communications that's already going on, the surveillance, widespread surveillance in certain countries that's already going on, will be legitimized if we change the system, the governance structure as it is now from multi-stakeholder to a sort of a UN run system, because member states will then be in some sense justified in doing what it is that they're currently doing.
OK, Paul in Dubai, you are the organisers, the International Telecommunications Union, of this conference. You've heard the fears, the possible fears of the other guests. How do you respond?
Well, just to point out, to start with, the ITU that is organising the conference is organising it at the request of its members. All of our 193 member states unanimously requested us to organise this conference because there are many issues, not just linked to internet, but linked to many of the telecommunications and global communications system, many issues which need to be discussed, hence the need to have a conference. There has been a lot of misinformation and misrepresentation, frankly, of what is going to be discussed at the conference. Our Secretary General, Dr. Hamadoun Touré, has repeatedly said for the last 12 months that we are not going to discuss internet governance. It is a fact that no matter what comes out of this conference, it will absolutely have no impact on freedom for expression. That is already guaranteed by Article 19 of the Covenant for Human Rights, and it's further guaranteed by Article 33 of the ITU Constitution. And a proposal that we don't hear much about is a proposal from Tunisia which aims to further strengthen this guarantee to protect and promote the right to communicate. So I believe this conference will actually champion the unconnected, and it will not be about disconnecting people.
You say, Paul, there are misconceptions, but isn't that because of the way you're organising all of this? All the submissions from countries, they're all being submitted to you, they're not being made public. This is a conference that only governments are being invited to, not everyone else.
Well, again, there's a lot of misinformation out there which we've been trying to counter with our small communications team.
Well, go ahead.
Up against some large corporate interests. But for instance, we've had a 4-year preparatory process in all of the regions of the world, in all different national languages, certainly the main 6 international UN languages. Our members in the UN, we're a UN agency for information and communication technologies, and we're unusual in the sense that we also have private sector and civil society members. One of those civil society members, for instance, is the Internet Society. So all of our members have access to all of our meetings and all of our documents. Furthermore, they have the right to share these documents however and with whomever they wish. So it's our members who decide how the documents are shared and if they want to share them themselves with their constituencies. So I believe that there has been a lot of transparency and openness and inclusiveness in this process. It's a typical intergovernmental preparatory process for a treaty-making conference, and indeed it's atypical in the sense that we've also engaged many private sector. Interestingly enough, some of those private sector interests who have been misrepresenting what's going on are themselves in Dubai at the moment, taking part actively in this conference. So it is absolutely untrue to say that it is a closed conference.
Who are those you referred a number of times now to private sector organisations that are misrepresenting the conference? Can you name them, please?
Well, we are all aware, for instance, of the Google campaign, where we're being told that this conference is about to regulate the internet, that the ITU is being asked to increase its regulatory authority. All of this is completely untrue, and just if we can stick to facts, the ITU has no regulatory authority, and regulatory authority does not happen at the international level, it happens at the national level. So it was always a misnomer to even represent that this could be a possibility in this conference. Having said that, Google is a member of ITU through its subsidiary Motorola, so they have been very active and they've had access to all of the documents. And indeed, as a non-member as an entity itself, they have had plenty of activity and interaction with ITU in many different levels, and we even collaborate on certain levels. And I'm hoping that we can post-Wicked, when all the scaremongering has concluded, we can get back to the constructive work of working together and working on the 2/3 of the world that still don't have internet access.
You said WICIT there. WICIT is the abbreviation for the conference. Let's bring in Richard in Amsterdam. We've heard there from Paul an open and transparent process. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that as well as the countries and the companies, that normal people like us, the billions of users of the internet, are properly represented here?
Well, I mean, any sort of world summits, there isn't sort of, proper representation of all sorts of people on the ground. But it is true that indeed there are sort of the non-governmental organizations, all kinds of advocacy groups, corporations, and others following what's happening very, very closely. So, I mean, there is information flow. There's also been quite a few leaked documents about a variety of proposals coming from those countries who Reporters Without Borders and Freedom House and others consider to be, well, not necessarily all that sort of, kind of freedom of expression friendly, so to speak, putting forward all sorts of different ideas about, new ways of changing the current governance structure of the internet away from what's called the multi-stakeholder system and away from largely, let's call it sort of, the American control, or at least that kind of history. So moving it from a sort of American sort of centric system to one that is international, that's situated in more of a sort of UN system of governance, and whether that's specifically exactly on the table in the 2012 summit, or whether that was exactly on the table in the the previous ones in Tunis and in Geneva and at WSIS, the World Summit on the Information Society, it's something that's been in the air for quite some time.
OK, well, we'll try and come to claims that the US dominates the governance of the internet a little later on. But looking still at the issue of censorship, let's take a look at some of the countries that do censor content on the internet. Well, what some people call the Great Firewall of China is perhaps the world's most impressive example. In addition to banning social networking sites, China also has tens of thousands of monitors who snoop and often hack into people's emails. Following protests in 2009, the Iranian government intensified its efforts to censor the web. It rounded up and jailed bloggers and internet dissidents, and the country often shuts down access to the internet when it expects anti-government protests. In Belarus, the government has also noticed the opposition's use of the internet. Websites are sometimes blacked out, opposition voices are monitored, and the government even uses websites like Twitter to intimidate journalists and activists. And last month, the United Arab Emirates, where this conference is being held, showed where it stands on internet censorship. It issued a new decree making it a crime to insult or criticise the country's leaders online. You know all about this, Ahmed. You were jailed for a time last year there in Dubai. Do you think this is the right place to be holding this conference?
Well, it's really not the matter of holding it in Dubai or any other place. It is that what matters to us is really what is going to be the outcome of this one here. The region definitely is not a freedom of expression friendly, and there are lots of individuals talking about bloggers, Twitter users, Facebook users, and what some others refer to as net citizens or netizens, basically are brought into justice simply because they wrote something that is considered by the state unfriendly or threatening the national security or imposing a threat on the national security, as they sometimes describe it, or threatening the social peace or public morality. And they use all those types of open-ended terminologies just to as a pretext, basically.
Okay, Ahmed, can you just remind our viewers what happened to you? Just give us a brief summary of what happened to you.
Well, I was arrested basically in April 2011 over charges related to the state security, basically charges. I was accused of insulting the top figures of United Arab Emirates, naming the president, the crown prince, and the crown prince of Abu Dhabi, and the vice president of UAE, simply because I've been the owner. I was the owner of a site that allowed some people to post comments, and those comments were really political comments and expressing the people's opinion, and has nothing wrong with them. And of course, I was put in jail for almost 8 months, and I was given an imprisonment sentence of three years. But I was released the next day on a presidential pardon after spending almost 8 months in jail.
Okay,
so
Ahmed. Having heard your experience,
yeah.
I'd like to bring in Paul again from the International Telecommunications Union. Having heard what you've heard there from Ahmed, and you've heard all about censorship in Dubai, is this really the right place to be discussing this?
Well, I believe the venue is not necessarily the most important aspect. And if I think our colleague there from Amsterdam talked about the World Summit for the Information Society, this was a multi-stakeholder platform looking at internet governance issues established by ITU, I'll have you know, the very first organization to start a multi-stakeholder platform. And the first one was in Tunisia. In 2005, and this, I think, is, we've seen an awful lot of improvements in Tunisia, and indeed it's Tunisia who is promoting the freedom of expression proposals during the current wicket. But I mean, I think we're getting quite derailed and sidelined, talking constantly about censorship, because it's simply not on the agenda. There are more than 500 proposals from member states. For any proposal to be accepted, it has to be backed by all of the members. There has to be complete consensus. We don't go to a vote in ITU.
Okay, Paul, you say
it's
not on the agenda, but some of these submissions have been leaked, and some of these submissions from countries like Russia, for example, are suggesting there should be more regulation of the internet. So some of these countries want it on the agenda. You would agree with that, wouldn't you?
They are proposals to the conference. When I'm talking more globally speaking, that is not what the conference is about. if we believe in freedom of expression, you will allow people to come with the issues that they believe are of concern. But it's highly unlikely that 193 countries are going to back those proposals. There are many, many other issues linked to bringing people with disabilities online, for instance, which is almost 700 million people around the world, about getting investment in the infrastructure that will be needed for global mobile broadband rollout, about looking at all of the issues which we know are coming in terms of the problem with the lack of investment in infrastructure and the parallel exponential growth in voice, video and data. These are issues these are the real issues of the conference. It's about bringing people who are still unconnected online. The one proposal, you talked about leaked proposals, but in fact the rules of ITU allow members to share with whomever they want. We can dramatize these as leaks if we like, but in fact they're allowed to share them with whomever they want, and there's been selective sharing. All of these, the interesting proposals, for instance, such as green energy, proposals to do with e-waste, and proposals to bring people to do more to bring people with disabilities online. These ones haven't been shared or debated so widely, and they're the ones that concern us way more than the more headline-grabbing censorship ones, which will absolutely not see the light of day at the end of the day, I can guarantee you.
Paul, I understand that this is the first conference of its sort since 1988. That was before we had the internet, before most of us had mobile phones and text messages. It seems the world of communications with regard to the internet, mobile communication, seems to have gone on fine without your body sitting. Why do you need this conference? One former advisor to the Obama administration says your body should be disbanded.
Well, it's very good that you bring this up, because the last conference in 1988 is widely accredited, including by the US administration and the European Commission, as having paved the way for what we now call the Information Society and the Mobile Miracle. It brought through very, very important liberalisation policies, which allowed for greater harmonisation of international policies, regulation and standardisation, which allowed private sector much more input and role in telecommunications, and very much contributed as a major catalyst to the mobile revolution. And we know and we want that this one will now bring us to the next level, which is the knowledge society, and really set the scene for the broadband revolution. And we're having this conference, I'd like to remind you, because our members want it, because they know that the principles need to be updated. And these are high-level principles. They won't be outdated in a year or two. They're meant to last 20 to 25 years so that they can really be inclusive and really, really drive the policies that are needed to underpin a modern global communication system.
OK, Ahmed, we heard Richard earlier on talk about US domination of the system that runs the internet. There's a corporation called ICANN. There's VeriSign that runs the .com domains. Do you think America has too much of a role in the way the internet's run?
Well, I think America definitely has some weight when it comes to the internet, simply because most of the major, or the giant internet companies are based in the United States, and those contributed greatly in the advancement of the internet to the level that we are seeing it in today. Definitely, the ITU is a government body, and we know from experience that ITU is very bureaucratic and sluggish body when it comes to changing resolutions and coming up with some sort of new standards. This process by itself, may not even be very good for the internet, because the internet is a fast-moving and developing technology, and putting some sort of a resolution that would be governed by an international body would remove that flexibility from the internet. And this is why I think some of the, even giant companies are refusing, such a conference and any regulation that might end up being adopted by member states.
Okay, I want to bring Richard. I want to bring Richard in on that point. Richard, very quickly to summarise at the end, can you tell us what you are hoping might come out of this conference?
Well, I mean, as some of the commentators were saying, the ITU a 150-year-old institution which has done a decent job at sort of, let's call it regulating, or at least putting into place a sort of platform for agreeing on world standards, for agreeing on international radio spectrum, things like this, country codes for dialing, for the telephone system. And the question is, do we want those sorts of ideas, those sorts of values to be kind of put into the internet? Or would we prefer, sort of the civic values, the liberal values that were in some sense built into the internet from the start?
Well, we're going to have to stop you there. We're going to have to let our audience consider those questions. The conference in Dubai goes on until December the 14th, so we'll have to wait to find out the final outcome. Thanks to our guests for joining our discussion. Paul Keneally in Dubai, Ahmed Mansour also in Dubai, and Richard Rogers, who joined us on Skype from Amsterdam. And thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. If you have comments on the future of the internet, you need to use the internet, go online and send us an email. Our address is insidestory@aljazeera.net. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye now.